In case I forgot.
Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is an interview at Lyons Hall, Canisius College, Buffalo, New York. It is the 6th of May, 2008. Approximately 2:20 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Full name is Louis J. Harasty, Harasty. Date of birth,
Yes, sir.
August 30th, 1924.
And where were you born?
Punxsatawney, Pennsylvania.
I saw that. I only thought groundhogs lived there.
That's right.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
I got as far as 11th grade in high school, and at that time, because the war was started, most of my colleagues in high school, we quit school because we knew we were going to be drafted in another year. So we all went to work in war plants till that time, and then I was I was inducted into the Army in 1943, March 9th, 1943, and the place where we were inducted was Fort Niagara. That's no longer there, I don't think. I think it's there, but it's not Fort Niagara anymore.
Now, when you went there, I know they had a POW camp there later on. It probably was after you were...
Yeah. It wasn't there when I was there.
It wasn't there.
When I was inducted. They got there after.
Yes, I thought
They were also over on Grand Island. Yeah.
Okay. Where did you go for your basic training?
Went to a place called Camp Edwards, Massachusetts. It was the start of a new battalion. It was an anti-aircraft Searchlight battalion. And it was a new outfit. They had a cadre present there. And we were all young, young people. We were just 19, most of us. Some 18. And the purpose of this unit was to guard the eastern seaboard from the attack by the Germans, of course. We had, I understand there were German submarines on our eastern seaboard. And they sunk a lot of our ships, our merchant marine ships. But anyhow, our job was to guard the eastern seaboard from New England down to the coast of Florida. And then, when the Germans went on the defensive, and we were on the offensive, this is after, the D-Day, there was no need for the Searchlight Battalion any longer. So they broke us up, and they split us all up into the infantry.
Let's go back to this. Could you tell us a little bit about how the battalion worked? I don't think we've ever interviewed anyone with the Searchlight Battalion. Go into a little detail about your equipment and so on.
Yeah. The searchlights were synchronized with radars, which were called the 268s, and they would track a plane as a practice plane would fly over with a big sleeve on the back. And then it was the searchlights would automatically synchronize in on that plane. Plus the 50 caliber machine guns would also. And they would open fire on that sleeve, the sleeve that was being dragged. A few times some of our boys made the mistake of hitting the plane instead. They were tracking the plane instead of the sleeve. So we'd go out at, say, about 11 o'clock at night, every night. And it was march order. And, we gathered all our equipment up, our searchlights, machine guns, and so on. And the radar was already there. And it was a huge operation at 268. It was a big radar. They used this at Pearl Harbor, this particular radar. But they paid no attention to the planes. They thought they were our own planes. Anyhow, and then we would stay out there till 3 in the morning, and then we'd go back to camp. And then we'd have another session the following day, somewhere else along there. And the interesting thing about this was we used to be right where the Kennedys used to live, over on the Cape there. they'd come up on and gallop up on their horses. We didn't know who they were. They didn't know who we were either. But they were very friendly. They were not very famous then. Yeah. But the Kennedys had their estate over there on the Cape where we used to, put our equipment up and so on. Anyhow, this went on for, let's see, from 1943 up until the middle of 45. And at that time, they broke up the outfit, the 359th, and transferred us into the infantry. We went to Camp Gordon, Georgia, where we got infantry training there. And then, let's see, after that, they sent us overseas to combat, and that was March of 45. The war was still on there, and this was after the Battle of the Bulge, of course. I think the Battle of the Bulge was in December, the previous year, in 44. And then I got shipped over to Camp Gordon, of course, and then from there they split us all up again, and then they sent us over on the banana boat there to Le Havre in France, and that's where they put us on trucks and expedited us to different units. And I was very fortunate. I got on this truck, and some of the boys that were on the truck with me were transferred into the infantry division, and I was sent to an artillery unit of the 69th Infantry Division. It was the 80th Field Artillery Unit, Battery B. And I remember one of my best friends got sent to the infantry. He was killed the next day. I heard he had gotten shot the next day. So I was very fortunate again. Just like I was fortunate being in the States all this time, I didn't have to get in on D-Day or any area like that. So from there, I went to Le Havre, and then, as I said, I got transferred to the 80th Field Artillery Unit.
Now, what was your job with them?
I was on a 105 outfit, 105 Hauser, and my job was to load the shells onto the gun.
So you were an ammo handler then?
I was an ammo handler, correct. And I remember one situation there. Now this was in March, so the war was still on, and we were chasing the Germans through Belgium. And we were attacked by the first jets that the Germans had. We were attacked by 4 jets. We shot one of them down with our 50 caliber machine gun, and the rest of them just zoom, swooped away. It's the first time jets were being used, and they were being used by the Germans. They adapted the ME-109 to operate with jet engines. And boy, that was something to see. Well, let me see now.
What did you think when you saw these aircrafts coming in at you to do?
Dove into the foxhole. In fact, we had been sitting around, and our sergeant was digging the foxhole, and 4 of us jumped into the foxhole, and the sergeant jumped in last. He was on top, and the poor guy, he was swearing at us and saying, "What's the matter with you guys? You made me do all this work, and then you're in there."
Were you strafed at all by them?
Oh yeah, we were strafed. One of our people was wounded, just one. And as I said, we shot one of the jets down, and I still have the joystick from that jet. I have that at home.
Wow.
The operational thing there. It's got the little buttons on there for the...
Now, did the pilot eject, or...
I think he was killed.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, because this was beyond our range there at the, beyond our range of fire. And I think I mentioned how we got up to the Remagen Bridge, and that was blown down when we got there. And the engineers put up a pontoon bridge, and we went across that. And that was towards Belgium there.
Now, what did you use to tow your guns,
A truck,
the trucks?
yeah, prime mover,
Mm-hmm.
a big truck. See, we were in back of the infantry, so we were pretty safe there. We were protecting the infantry with our shells, our outbursts. We had our forward observer beyond the infantry, and they would check to see where the Nazis were, and they'd call back on the telephone, and then we would zero in on them with our 105s. Well, I was in, I think 3 combat engagements, yeah, 3, while I was there. And needless to say, I was very frightened. I was just a young kid, and I wanted to get home.
Now, you followed then the Germans through
We followed the Germans right along.
Europe?
And the Germans got as far as the Russians. The Russians had been attacking Moscow, and they were defeated there, the Germans were. And then our division, the 69th Infantry Division, linked up with the Russians on the Elbe River. And that was more or less the culmination of the war.
Mhm.
And that was, let's see, what year was that? That was in March the 4th. March the 4th of 45.
Now, did you encounter the Russians at all
No, I
yourself?
didn't, no, because we were in a 105 outfit
Mhm.
that was behind the infantry.
Mhm.
It was infantry people that linked up with the Russians.
Right.
And as I said, that was the culmination of the war, and a few weeks later, that was the end, you
Mhm.
know?
Were you aware of the concentration camps at all?
Oh, yeah. The towns we went through, practically every German town had a concentration camp. And it was very sad to see because the Germans had just left real rapidly because we were on their tail, chasing them. Our infantry was. And the poor people in the concentration camps were just, you know, they were so overjoyed to see American troops coming in there to save them. They were so happy. And it was an awful sight because you saw all these bodies of these poor people that were killed by the Germans. They were ready for the ovens,
Mhm.
but they never got them in there because they had to get out of there quickly. That was one of the sad occasions that I encountered while I was there. I think one of the most joyous occasions was when we'd go through a town and the Nazi flags of surrender were pulled down and they threw up white flags of surrender, the residents there. And so that was a very happy occasion to see that happen. I think I mentioned one of the humorous things was when we moved into this one town where they had a cigar factory and a brewery. And we captured that, and everybody was smoking cigars and drinking beer. So that was a very happy time.
Now, you also mentioned something about hunting chickens.
Oh, that was at the Rhine River, yeah. We were kind of bored. We're along the Rhine River there. The Rhineland Bridge had been blown down, and there was a pontoon bridge there, and there was chickens across the way there. And we got out our rifles and were taking pot shots at the chickens. Keep busy.
Mhm. Did you ever have many encounters with the German people themselves?
Yes, we did have encounters with the German civilians, yes.
Mhm.
Yes, we did, and they were very calm and sedated, and I guess they were kind of glad to see us too, because I think on the whole, most of the German civilians didn't care for Adolf Hitler and his Nazi. There were two groups there. The Nazis were the bad guys. They were the ones that really worked in the concentration camps. The good guys were the Wehrmacht. They were like us. They were just regular soldiers. And I recall a situation when I went over to Belgium to visit my son Paul, who was working for NATO at the time. He's a commander in the Navy right now. And we went to visit Luxembourg, where the Americans are buried. It's a beautiful cemetery there. General Patton is buried in front, and all his men are buried behind him there. That was quite a thing. And then just a couple hundred yards away is the German cemetery, where the Wehrmacht soldiers are buried. They have a cemetery there just for them. No Nazis there. Just the regular German soldiers that were drafted into the war to fight for Hitler. So, let's see, what else do we have here?
How did you celebrate in your unit? How did you celebrate the end of the war?
I think we sat around a campfire with the shell boxes. We were burning them, made a big fire, and we were just very happy and overjoyed. But of course, the war was still going on in Japan. That was the sad part. And they're the ones that really suffered. Those poor people, they were attacked by the dive bombers, suicide bombers. Our boys over on the islands were the same way. These guys were suicidal, these Japanese soldiers. They were informed that they were dying for the emperor and that they would go to Valhalla or heaven or whatever it is. They had no regard for human life. And that's
Now, was your unit going to be assigned to the invasion?
Not my unit, just myself and whoever were the replacements.
Oh, okay.
Because the regular unit stayed there in Germany for, I think, another year and a half. We were scheduled to go back home for a 30-day furlough, and then we were supposed to be in on the invasion of Japan. And of course, President Truman dropped the atom bomb on Nagasaki. Nothing happened. They still didn't surrender. He dropped it on Hiroshima, or was it vice versa? I don't remember. And then they did surrender. And that's when I told Mr. Truman, when he was here at Canisius College, I said, President Truman, you saved my life. And he said, how so? And I said, well, I was on my way home from the ETO for the invasion of Japan. And while we were on the high seas, I was on the Montclair Victory with all these other guys that were scheduled to go to Japan for the invasion of Japan. And you passed us in the cruiser Augusta. It was like we were standing still. Your ship just zoomed right by us, and you were aboard the ship at 0600, and you were waving to us. And our ships recognized, blew the whistle from the ship as an acknowledgement that, you know, we were saying hello to Mr. Truman. And then I got home in July. I think it was the middle of July. And then I was sent home. Oh, I didn't get home till August for a 30-day furlough. And of course, then you dropped the atom bomb. I think it was August the 6th, I'm not sure. It was sometimes in August. You dropped the atom bomb and the Japanese surrendered. I got discharged. So that was a very happy thing. I'm sure that if I had been in on the invasion of Japan, I would not be here talking to you, Mr. Truman, right now. So he was very happy about that. And he told me how he hated to drop that bomb. But he said he had no recourse but to do that, because he warned the emperor and his staff that if they didn't stop these suicidal bombings against our ships and against our men in the islands, they owned most of the islands at the time, and he would do something terrible. And dropped the first bomb, they didn't do anything. Dropped the second bomb, they surrendered. The war was over. So that's how you saved my life, Mr. Truman. And he had a big smile on his face, and he signed my press pass. At the time, we had 5 children. He put their names on the press pass, and I was so happy. So.
Now, could you show us the photographs of yourself?
Well, this one here is when I was a PFC, branch of service, U.S. Army. This is when I was in the anti-aircraft, the 359th. And I had this picture taken when I came home.
Could you hold that up in front of you?
Yeah. And this is the World War II memorial back here. This is a replica from the picture that they have on view there, on file.
I'm getting some glare on that.
Now, that was probably taken somewhere around 43 then, or?
This was taken in 43, the first furlough I had. I think it was in January, or maybe January of 44, somewhere around there. And then down below here, it says, served in Rhineland, Central Europe, American campaign ribbon with 2 bronze stars. That denotes battles, 2 bronze stars. Victory ribbon, that's from the war being over with, and 1 service stripe. That's the little stripe that you got down here for 3 months of service. Every time you serve 3 months, you got a little service stripe. So, that's it.
Now, how about the photograph on the other side?
Oh, the other side.
Yes.
This is when I was at Le Havre, France, on my way home to the United States when I was being sent over for the invasion of Japan. So they sent me home for a 30-day furlough, and then after that 30-day furlough, I was to be part of the invasionary forces going against Japan. But of course, the atom bomb was dropped, and I didn't have to go. So that's me with my combat boots on and my fatigues and so on. Soft hat. And this is the picture of President Truman that I took here in the residence hall. I don't know whether that's called Loyola Hall or what, where the Jesuits lived. But this is when he was sitting up there, relaxing between sessions there.
Now, what year was that?
This was in '62. He was here to receive an honorary degree from Canisius College. And he was here for a couple days. This is where he held up the newspaper that said, "Dewey defeats Truman." And it was just the other way around. So he was so happy about that. He was such a nice man. I took a lot of photographs of him, and most of them are on the negatives the college has in their archives. But he was such a pleasant person. He was so nice. But as I said, he signed my little press pass here to Mary Joan, Joseph, Barbara, Peter, and John Harasty. At that time, we only had 5 out of the 8. So that's kind of it. And I'm giving this to my son when I meet my reward. I'm going to give this to my son, Peter. He wants it. He's a photographer, commercial photographer. He's very well known in Las Vegas. That's where he does all his photography work. But he wants this picture for himself, so I'm giving it to him.
Okay. After you left the service, did you make any use of the GI Bill?
Oh, absolutely. First, I always wanted to be a photographer, and of course I couldn't do that while I was in the Army, because I didn't have any experience. So I went to one of the best photography schools in the country. It was called the Progressive School of Photography. It was at Yale University in Connecticut, and I graduated from there in various commercial, black and white, color photography. And then I came home and I opened up a studio, and then I suddenly realized I need more education. So I enrolled here at Canisius College in 52, or 51, yeah, 51. And I got my bachelor's degree here, and while I was here, I did all the photography for the yearbook and the PR work, everything. And I continued to do this work for, up until from 52 up until 67, good number of years. And needless to say, I didn't make out too well academically, because the rector would call me up in the classroom and say, "We need you down here to take a picture." So they took advantage of me all the time, which I was grateful for. And then after, of course, I decided that while I was running the studio and so on, this opening came up for an instructor in photography, and But prior to that, I worked for the Buffalo Evening News, and I worked for the bishops, Buffalo. I covered 3 bishops while they were here in Buffalo for their newspaper, and I took all the portraits of the bishops and so on. And then I worked for the news as a summer replacement, and then there was this opening for a teacher at McKinley High School. One of my good friends, Jim Harmon, who's also a graduate of Canisius College, was the principal, and he said, "Lou, we've got a job for you here. This guy that's teaching photography here, he's not certified." He said, "Now I'm going to get you in there, and then you got to go get your certification." So I did. He gave me the job, and I was there for 22 years. And I got my certification. I also got my master's degree, because the more credentials you had, the more pay. The better was the pay. So I stayed there a long time, and I just retired in 1996 from McKinley High School. And I'm kind of retired now. I do mostly digital photography because the wet process is on its way out. And I don't know whether people realize it, but I think in another couple of years you won't be able to buy film anymore. It's all going to be digital.
Mhm.
So it's an exciting field, digital photography. And I do a lot of that. I really enjoy it. It's amazing what can be done with a photograph in the digital area.
Just in your time in photography, you've seen a lot of change then? in
Oh,
the
yes.
field.
I started off using flash bulbs. They were called Press 22s. It was like a big 100-watt bulb. And whenever you took a picture, you stuck one of those into your flash gun. And it was a 4x5 format camera. And then from there it went to reflex camera, 120 camera. And now it's finally gone to 35. Everybody uses 35 millimeter film, but now it's gone to the digital stage. So everything's digital now, and newspaper photography in every area. My son Peter, who's a commercial photographer in Las Vegas, he says that his clients now demand a disc of all the work that he does for them, and he gets paid the same amount. He hands them the disc the same day. And he gets a check for the full amount that he would ordinarily charge for regular 2 1/4, 3 1/4 transparencies. So we've come a long way in photography, boy.
Did you ever join any veterans organizations at all?
Yeah, I belong to a veterans organization out in off of Genesee Street, but unfortunately I haven't been a very good member. I pay my dues and everything. I really should go back there and get involved.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was
Oh yes, we
in
have
service with you?
the 359th, that's my original outfit. We have a reunion every year, and I've been going to that. And this year it's going to be in August again, or right after Labor Day, that's when it is. And one year it's in New York, and the following year it's in Pennsylvania somewhere, because the original outfit, half of the people were from New York State, and the other half were from Pennsylvania, this battalion that was formed, the 359th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I enjoy those, but there's fewer and fewer people showing up for the reunions now. There's not many of us left.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so fortunate. I thank God for my lifespan. I'm 83 right now, and I can't believe it. I'm still around.
You look great too.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you think your time in the service had an effect on your life?
Oh, I think it had a very good effect on my life.
In what ways?
Morally, every way. I think the worst thing that the country did here was to eliminate the draft. I think every person that has lived in this country should be inducted into the Army and serve some time. My son Paul, I have this in writing, he wrote me a letter and he said, "Dad, I really love the Navy. I think I owe the Navy something. I owe my country some time." And right now, he's, you know, he was fighting over in Iraq, and he's been all over. Right now, he's stationed in Washington, and he's going to be an attaché in Paris, him and his wife and a little child. But he always told me that he owes a lot to his country for the good life that he's enjoyed here. So that's why he joined the Navy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Okay.